Hey there, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here, Simply Worldbuilding. Today we're going to get a little bit holy. We're going to start talking about gods and pantheons and how to build them to make your world and how to make them feel fluid and not weird or clunky. The basic idea is don't do, in like classic D&D for instance, there are 100 million of them.
Yeah.
And then in your game or in your storybook, you will use 4 ever.
Yeah.
So there's no point in doing all of that work because the more work you do, the more time you're spending on it. And then also the more holes you have. If you got this whole sheet and your players and your readers know that you've got all these things, now they're kind of going to ask like, where are they? And like, why do we never hear about them? Why aren't they doing anything? Why do they not exist? Or whatever. And that's just more questions than is necessary. So you can just safely cut that down by like a quarter. And then I think we mentioned this in one of the last episodes.
Yeah.
Where you can have one god or goddess that has like 4 aspects that people know them for, and maybe they know them as different gods or goddesses, but are actually just kind of a part of one. And that is a very simple way to keep it simple, but then also have all of these other things that people can look to as a deity.
Yeah. A lot of the time you'll find as well, like, gods get... As a pantheon develops, like, the gods get more and more abstract. But what I think you'll find is that the stuff that people will actually encounter in the world are going to be gods that are a lot more grounded. They're... In certain cases, you might find that there's not necessarily, like, a god of water, but, like, a god of this particular river or things like that. Like, those are things you can find in places and like that people reference constantly. There may be a temple to a god somewhere, there might be a shrine, or like these things that people actually interact with are basically going to be your conduit to interacting with the god itself. You can also have like, maybe not necessarily gods, but the idea of like sort of a spirit as well is also kind of a good way to do it. That can be a spirit of this forest, or again, singular sort of entities rather than broader concepts are probably things that people would interact with more regularly and find more just find more grounded and more related to them.
It's much more personal. It's much easier to have that be involved in somebody's story and somebody's life in a nearby area. If they are something simple like that. That's kind of, I believe that is Shintoism, where that's kind of a thing. If they've got kamis rather than like gods. They're kind of gods, but like it's almost more like a spirit, like you said, where there's a spirit of, you know, this pond or of this like gas station bathroom or something like that. There's one everywhere, and it's a personal thing, and some of them are nice, some of them are mean, some of them are protective, whatever. But that is something that people can relate to and can have much more of a specific impact on, and they can have an impact on the people's life in turn so much easier, and at also like a lower, less almighty level as well, if it's something that has, you know, a limited range, a limited power, that kind of thing, rather than an almighty, omnipresent, like world scale thing. Exactly. Because if you've got something that can do anything, then it's so much harder to sort of like disconnect from the why are they not solving all these problems then. But if it's like, I come from a small town and we worship the god of the gas station bathroom, and then it's like, well, why are they not helping us out? And it's like, they have their own domain, got their stall to hang out in, and they've, you know, we're far away, like, you know, they have limited amounts of power, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, limitations, one thing I so advocate for when it comes down to doing like literally anything creative is limitation actually breeds creativity. And so having just like a sort of, at least in like a setting, like a fantasy setting, like having a singular deity that is completely omnipresent, can sort of be hard to work with, because for the reasons you said, where if you provide limitations to things, even something like the gods, it can actually create more interesting stories, it can create more interesting plot points, and more interesting personalities for the deities themselves as well. Like, limitations will absolutely make more interesting your pantheon, for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to make like one singular omnipresent deity be impactful and inspiring. It's a pretty easy excuse to say why they're not single-handedly fixing the problem, though, because they're busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on, because they've got all of this stuff to look after. Maybe they've got different worlds to look after and stuff like that. There's a lot going on for one deity.
Or you could even chalk it up to apathy as well. Sometimes,
yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
it's just like they don't actually care that much.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, that's fine. But it's a little bit harder, in my opinion, to make it kind of personal if it's kind of the same deity that everybody has as all-encompassing and is omnipresent and all that.
It just disconnects. It just disconnects the person from what they're worshiping a little bit, I think. Yeah.
But it's easy to write off like why they're not, fixing all the problems and they're not interacting and stuff like that. And then you have the other option where you have indefinite spirits, commies, gods, whatever. And then kind of your third option is to do sort of middle of the road instead of the 48 or whatever that like the D&D classic is.
Yeah.
You cut that right down and you still get, let's say there's like 6 actual deities and they have their different personalities that people worship as separate deities. That way you still have a level of these sort of like personability, like the direct connection to people, different aspects, but there's also not so many of them that they can interact too strongly in the story or in somebody's life. You can kind of like choose somebody who has your aspects and has your best intentions in mind at heart. But there's still, if there's only like really only 6 of them, then maybe they can't get down and dirty and do all the hard work themselves.
Yeah.
Or you could have also like, one thing I was kind of thinking is that for us, if we were to choose like, maybe 6 or something like that, that either one of them or an additional one is kind of like, the like god of law or something like that. And there is kind of like a rule set in place where like you cannot interfere with this. Like you can, guide somebody that is your chosen or something like that to kind of enact like your will on the world, but you cannot get involved. You can't go down there and do it yourself. Kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. It's a way you can also you can have many gods, but like actually few is something I think we had mentioned previously. Like you said, it's like the misinterpretation of a deity to be something or an aspect of it, or even just a straight up misinterpretation, can allow you to sort of have your cake and eat it too with your quantity of gods. You can have your 50 when in actuality it's maybe only 10. So it's you can make your pantheon feel a lot more full. Yeah. But it's something us mere mortals don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of screw around with that sort of idea as well.
I think that it does kind of help make the world feel a little bit more full, in my opinion, to have like, let's say it is just an even like 6, and you've got whatever god here that is being misinterpreted for their attributes, the things that they stand for, and so you've got like the god of love, and then somewhere across the world there's the goddess of passion or something like that, and they have different names for them and they worship them in different ways, they pray for them in different ways, and they kind of expect different things of them, but they're both worshiping the same one, which is also not this one, it's that one further up.
Yeah.
But it kind of just gets like, mistranslated across the world because maybe they hadn't been communicating specifically about all these things back in ye olden days when they, discovered these gods or whatever.
Even that might be the fact that a god might actually just treat one set of peoples different than the other set.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons to do that. But either way, there's ways for you to screw with the details in order to actually make things fit whatever you're sort of going for. In my D&D game, I have gods, and for the most part I'm kind of creating my own like homebrewed version of like whatever D&D presents to me, but also the idea of sort of like spirits and sort of singular entities that represent singular places and things also exist at the same time, and so there's a lot of different ways you can slice it. In the case of this world that we're crafting right now, we have a god of chaos. That is the only one we've made so far, but I guess we can kind of start asking questions from there. So, so you were pitching sort of a 6.
Yeah, maybe like a 6, just sort of as a base, and then we can kind of choose like, you know, I think that it's a good idea to start from kind of a list of things that you want to have coverage.
Yeah.
Because you will need, you know, like a deity of nature or whatever, but that can easily be, you know, included in, for instance, like the god of chaos or something like that, because it kind of is in a way, or it could be also chucked into the god of life or something like that. But as long as you have kind of like an idea of what you want covered and then find a way to make that make sense into one of the 6, I think that 6 is an all right number, because that should be enough where we can have a wide enough spread to cover basically any aspect that we want.
Yeah, enough to have like a few broad domains. Yeah, definitely. Okay. We were also, we were toying around with the idea of them being technically celestial bodies.
Yeah.
So thoughts on that so the idea is that the god of chaos was Earth, and that the other gods or one or whatever are trying to basically like sort of tame them in a way, or bring order to them.
I have another thought to pitch you.
Okay, shoot.
How do you feel about the idea of... I think that it's really interesting to have the deities be like celestial bodies, but what if... This is just an idea.
Yeah.
Our Earth, our planet that this is all taking place on, is actually kind of like the body of like an old dead god or something like that.
Okay.
And so that's kind of why there was like this, like, you know, the god of chaos got kind of involved and was like starting to do things here. And then the other gods got involved and were like trying to kind of like push that back and suppress that, because maybe they didn't want him, you know, taking over a domain that wasn't his, that sort of thing.
That's an interesting idea as well, although it would bring up a bit of a rework on what we were thinking sort of the magical sort of zones were, because those were sort of build-ups of chaos that sprout naturally, and so that comes at a pretty straightforward thought process with this is the body of the god of chaos. Now, it being a dead god.
It's also solid too. I do like that.
Well, just the question that sprouts up to me with the dead god is a few questions really, but like, what is a dead god? Are they older than the current ones? And what was the aspect of the god that has perished? I think those are the 3 sort of questions that it poses, that you can't really just leave lying there.
In my mind, like, a dead god could be replaced by another one. Like, there must always be one to fill that gap kind of thing. So, like, I guess my immediate reaction is, what if that was, like, the old god of chaos or whatever? And so that's kind of maybe why the new one was like, well, I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna go back. This is like, you know, my, like, my inheritance or whatever. Like, I'm kind of owed this.
Okay.
And so like infested the planet or something like that.
Okay.
And then the other ones were kind of all universally like, you can't do that. And I'm not necessarily like fully committed to this idea. It was just something that came up in my head and I wanted to pitch it.
We could, if we wanted to make that work, we could have the god of chaos be the parental figure of all of the current ones, and then the old one died, and sort of whoever the eldest was is sort of claiming this as their own territory, but it all of a sudden becomes a bit of a dispute among the children on who gets what. Like, oh, well, it's rightfully mine. It's like, well, it should be all of ours, and it's 5 against 1 on that. So that is sort of a way I could see that happening. And so, like, the 5 would team up on this on the eldest inheritor, but the eldest is also the most powerful and finds ways to fight back over time.
I think it's an interesting idea that has a lot of potential for cool, like, long-term reveals and that sort of thing, having it be like an old dead god or something like that. But I am worried that it could be just a little bit overcomplicating a good thing. You know what I mean?
No, that's also fair enough, totally. I did like the celestial bodies idea, because it also does bring in, like we were saying, it'd be kind of like the how the zodiac works, although planets would function very differently from how stars are. But we can arrange that however we want.
It's also interesting, like, because in my mind, I don't think that, like, I think there are going to be aspects of, like, on each of these planets, things that are kind of represented by these deities, but I don't think that it has to be, like, you know, other planets that are perfectly this. I think that that kind of just, like, is the body. There's going to be aspects of it, but not each one is, like, you know, if there's the god of fire, it doesn't have to be a sun that is just on fire or whatever. It can have, like, you know, certain aspects of it or whatever. Or like the god of life doesn't have to also necessarily be a planet full of, like, life or whatever, but it could be a planet that's, like, got water or something like that.
More vibrant than the others.
Yeah, exactly.
You sort of treat them like planes in D&D a little bit. Yeah, so sort of what I had considered over the week a little bit to do with this sort of gods are these celestial bodies sort of idea is that was definitely something I had considered as well. How each of these bodies affects the earth when it's visible, you know, or when it's closest. I feel like we would either have to do a lot of research into how our current solar system works or make up a way that it works for our sake, because we have complete control over that. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one Earth to whatever our world is, but the way the astronomy works is something we would have to kind of figure out in that case. But getting into the single gods a little bit more, the idea that this one is the god of chaos is a cool idea for me. One thing that came up though when thinking about this is, are all the gods planets, or are suns and moons also included in that?
I kind of like the idea of it, but also I think that just having, like, space and there being junk in space, but some of these things floating around in space are gods, is pretty cool. So not necessarily every moon has to be, but it is interesting to think of, like, some of these, like, moons being lesser deities or something like that as well is pretty interesting.
Yeah, there was a few things I kind of was toying around with that, but it was a question I wanted to pose because I was like, okay, are all celestial bodies the same in this sort of thing? Because we also don't have to put moons on our other planets, you know what I mean? There doesn't have to be other moons, but the moon, if we're going with the way Earth works, is a good question. The sun is a good question. Are we actually revolving around the sun in this universe, or is it revolving around us?
It's just a safe bet to give yourself a moon. Like, if you give yourself 2 moons, if you give yourself 5 moons, that's sick. But then people are gonna go, well, how do the tides work? And you're gonna... You know what I mean? Or if you have no moon, how do the tides work? And like, that's a mess.
You can easily just say, fuck off, don't think about it.
Oh, a wizard did it.
A wizard did it.
Yeah. A wizard does the tides.
Yeah.
It's how he does his reps. He just goes...
Well, I mean, I guess in fairness, if we have the planets being celestial bodies, and one of them is gonna have one of their aspects being water and nature and stuff like that, then we could always have it be like with the orbits of that one and stuff like that. We could answer that question.
Yeah.
But it's not that big of a deal to have a moon.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool if we have a moon.
Yeah. Well, it's not really if, it's just like what would the moon be then? Is it one of these gods? Because I had a bit of a thought on this, because assuming the moon works in about the same way that it does on Earth, it is going to be the closest. So what I thought was like, okay, that proximity might be an important factor. What if the okay, so I was assuming also, if we have a god of chaos, are we going to have a god of order? That is a question that we can pose.
I think
So you want to have 2 that are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I thought maybe the moon could be the god of order because it's constantly it's basically always keeping an eye on the planet itself. Like it's not letting it have its own space. It is constantly supervising, or even what could be a cool idea is even it's actually actively trapping the moon, or the planet in a magical way or something like that. I had
considered as an alternative, and even more so when you mentioned that, like, hey, in our world, are we gonna orbit around the sun, etc., etc., does it orbit around us? I had considered that the god of order / the god of law or whatever, maybe the one that keeps people or deities from truly interacting with, like, humanity and stuff like that, is the sun. And maybe it's kind of like a little bit outside of the pantheon. Like it's like the center. It keeps the gods in place. Like literally and metaphysically, emotionally. Maybe it doesn't really have any specific impact or anything that it wants to like bestow upon humanity or whatever. Maybe it's kind of just there to keep like the gods in place and in check, and that's like the sun at the center, right? And then all the other ones are kept in orbit by it.
One thing I think that would do for the Pantheon in general is make order more powerful than chaos, which is a specific choice you'd have to... I think that can have greater effects on just how things unfold as we go forward.
I don't necessarily think that that's celestial deity favoritism.
Okay.
Just because, like, chaos and order need each other and are also diametrically opposed. But neither is right or wrong. Like, nature is inherently, like, chaos and kind of order, but, like, you know, like the yin and yang, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I think that kind of, like, one overstepping the other one's bounds is like wrong. But I guess that also kind of begs the question of like, well, why were they allowed to do it
in
here
the first
and now?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's a great question. The reason I had also kind of considered the moon as well is sort of because it bestows light even when it's dark. It has distinct cycles. It has distinct effects on the world, like you said, the tides and stuff like that.
And you can also tell the passing of time by it and stuff like that. It's very predictable. And like, you know, safe and sturdy. Right?
So is the sun, but that's more because of the rotation of the earth.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was kind of considering it. And also, like, gods of order are kind of often the sun. And so I thought it was an interesting contrast.
Yeah.
We could have... Because you had said we had 6 and then, like, possibly maybe, like, some sort of outlier or something like that. My first thought is that the 7th was maybe chaos. It's, like, the perfect... The number 7 is often just kind of associated with just, like, otherness.
Yeah.
And so that would be perfect for that exact aspect. The other idea you can kind of go with, though, is that maybe there are the 6 children... and then the 7th one, or rather the first one, and then there's the other 7. There's one that's like the parent of them, which could easily be the son, but it sort of guides them and sets the rules, but also lets them do their own thing. And that could be an interesting idea as well, because at least from the vibe I'm getting, the gods are going to be this whole free will thing that's been going on, and what's been going on with Earth and the realm of chaos and stuff like that is a little bit of them running amok.
Yeah.
What that says to me is that whatever this sort of parental god is leaving them to do what they will, which is sort of the same thing that the gods are doing for humanity itself. Yeah. And so I feel like that's just sort of like, it almost feels like a cycle that's continuing downward forever. So we could have like a sort of singular god that is sort of a god of everything, and then it goes down to the kind of gods proper that are its children and the ones that actually have effects and on life itself, and are sort of picking on the god of chaos as its other member. But again, we did sort of have this idea that it's like, oh, the free will of humans is sort of something you're not supposed to screw with.
Yeah.
Why is that a law? And it seems like it very well could be, because that's what the original god is doing for them now. And so that's like the one law they're not allowed to break, because that's the one law that's being followed even by them.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that's where my mind tries to make those connections, basically. So we could have a sun, the sun as the sort of main deity that's just like so separated that the humans don't even really have any sort of like, they see it, it's there, and it has an effect on them all the time, but it's not one that they have any level of interaction with beyond what the celestial body actually does for them. And then there's the other planets that have all these other aspects that are constantly kind of toying or trying to bring things in their favor, or are constantly at war with this other last chaos child.
Yeah.
Is how I think it should work.
I like it, and I think that it makes sense, and if not setting it in stone, we can at least set it in mud for the time being.
Yeah.
Like a nice soft clay.
Yeah.
And then after we like build our specific pantheon and decide which gods are which, then we can kind of decide on how they interact afterwards. But it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to kind of decide what like aspects we need to specifically cover.
That's definitely a great point.
Do you want to just ramble off the top of our head, or do you want to take a quick sec and make a list?
Well, I would want to like pull them up so at least we have like reference to them. I think a really important question off the bat is this sort of main parental god the god of order, or is it just sort of a omniscient?
I think maybe closer to like the omniscient, like, you know, the creator kind of like thing.
Yeah.
But then it pretty much just keeps its hands off. It at least keeps its hands off of like the humanity tier, and like, you know, if it needed to, could like intervene in like the deity tier.
Okay.
Of creations. But as far as like it doesn't bother to interact with anything.
Yeah, I do like the sort of again like godly apathy sort of connecting with this main one. But now from this main one, so now with that being the question, so there will be a god of order.
Yeah. So what does god of order mean to you?
That is that's a huge question.
We've got like the things that we kind of need to make sure that we cover for sure, that like you typically will see in any pantheon is like life and death. In my opinion, I think that they often go together rather than being a god of life, a god of death. You're gonna have like nature. You're gonna have like war or strength or something like that. And I think that order, to me, I think kind of makes sense if that were like the life and death. You know, like that circle of life, the predictable elements like taxes. Yeah.
Life, death, and taxes. Yeah. That's their domain. Yeah, those are sort of you're right, like more predictable ways of things that you could consider for that sort of god. When I think of order as well, though, I also do think sort of like it's the way humanity seems to interact with nature. You build your cities, you build your structures. They are often very Euclidean in nature and very, very thought out, but also even in humanity, like interacting with nature, like you can think of like a garden. You take the chaos that is nature and you arrange it in a way that
works for you.
Yeah. Well, I think the epitome of order isn't just it working for you.
Yeah.
It's working for everything within that ecosystem. It's sort of it's balance. You know what I mean? And so that's the life and death would sort of be definitely part of those aspects as well, because when you have a garden, you are also in charge of what is planted there, but also what needs to be cut out. And so that seems to be part of order as an aspect for me. It is not merely, like you said, it's not merely life, it's not merely death, but it is organization. Organization is I think how I would interpret order as a concept, at least for the sake of what we're doing here. Yeah,
I think that other like keywords such as, you're right, like a balance, like an organization, are good things to chuck under there as well, because those are going to be kind of like the other aspects that could be like translated or read as separate gods that other people elsewhere may worship, like, you know, the god of life, the god of death, the god of balance, the god of organization, and that will be kind of the funnel into the god of order.
Definitely. So now we have we have that, and then we have the diametrically opposed. Yeah, that's too big. We have the god of chaos, which I'm going to make red. Nice. Forgive me. So I think it'll be better if we start at the opposite sides and work our way back through the middle. And so we have the opposites of those things. Is that exactly the way we want to do it? Are they perfectly diametrically opposed, or are there other things? Because I see nature and the way we've kind of built it, nature being chaos itself.
I entirely agree. I absolutely think that chaos, or like kind of nature, is like one of the prime aspects of chaos. I think that there kind of typically is like a god of nature, but I think that it just fits so perfectly.
Yeah, at least for the way our world is going to be interpreting things. Yeah, definitely.
But I think that like there's probably going to be a lot of people that worship various gods of nature. But does that all funnel back into the god of chaos, do you think?
I think nature should be an aspect, and I guess if we're going to be doing opposites, I guess civilization should be... I guess it doesn't even have to be necessarily civilization, but the god of order could also be in aspects of like just social creatures and how they arrange, not just humans, you know what I mean? But yeah, like the man versus nature appears to be kind of like a main theme that we have going on here. So I think, yeah, at least for now, we'll go with the idea that...
Yeah, I kind of agree. It feels honestly kind of strange to not have a god of nature, like one where that's like kind of their thing, but it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, totally. So now for the remaining ones, are they going to be in these sort of in-between areas? Like, what other aspects are there? Or are they going to be maybe...
Because what are other things that like people in these fantasy worlds tend to pray for or look for direction in regards to
within?
Because I think that, like, you know, you have things like strength or mercy or that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
You know, forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, also like knowledge. God's knowledge
absolutely,
is a thing.
yeah, knowledge, because like craftsmen and scholars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I definitely do think that like a deity of like knowledge is a really good one, because that covers, I think, a lot of bases.
Yeah, definitely. I'm having a bit of a thought, and it would, I think, screw with kind of what we're building right now.
Okay.
But what my brain is having a hard time trying to reconcile is order and chaos. You can just file everything in between those two. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Everything can be stuffed in between those, and so to put other aspects underneath them feels like another tier down. You know what I mean? Like everything that's going to be, like if we're considering knowledge, war, all of these other things, it feels like they're going to be somewhere in between these two, and so it feels weird for all of these sort of 6 gods to be equals in a way when there's clearly 2 that kind of take the reins. So what if instead of having this sort of singular parental god and then the 6 beneath, what if we did the god of chaos and god of order as sort of the parental figures, and then there's the 6 beneath them?
Okay, so what are we thinking then? Do you want to go like... I mean, we can backtrack a little bit further and say then that, like, instead of, like, the other planets, these are the sun and the 6 moons around our planet, where, like, our planet is chaos or whatever, and then, like, the sun is order, maybe, or something like that, or is this one that's beyond. And then there's additional moons that kind of represent these other things, and that would make it kind of a little bit even easier to say, like, you know, you were born under the moon of love, and so that
6 moons sounds cool, but it's kind of busy.
It's a little busy.
It's a little busy up in the sky there. I feel like we could still go with planets pretty easily. Now, we could do... This is all kind of a fantasy trope you'll find just in general, is like you'll see like big-ass planets in the sky, and it's like, if they were that close, we would collide. But we could do something like that, where, yeah, they are like... you know, planets and celestial bodies, but they're maybe, instead of like how big the moon is, like maybe even smaller than that, they're like a little closer and big enough to be different from stars, unlike how we kind of see them from the ground here. We could do, yeah, sun and earth. There's still moon and earth, and it would also kind of make their proximity kind of make sense. But now sun and earth kind of makes a lot of sense, and they sort of, yeah, underneath them are these 6 other aspects. And like the chaos is sort of the where creation happens.
Yeah, because that is kind of inherently a whole lot of chaos that led to, you know, existence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on what you believe.
Yeah.
In the episode about gods.
Yeah. But yeah, now it's like their children are sort of trying to take part in creation, and so they are trying to follow the rules of the one while using the essence of the other. You see what I mean? Which I think is a lot easier of a mythology to try and work with. It also seems to create a bit... I feel like there's probably got to be some sort of weird tragedy mixed in with that, just because, like, it is the... I mean, we could go with the dead god trope, because it's the body of the mother that is... Well, I don't know why I was assuming mother, but it's the body of that one that is sort of, again, being host to all of these things. You know what I mean? They are sort of the battleground in a way for these sorts of things, and so just whenever we ended up wanted to come up with the mythology of the whole thing, I just feel like that's kind of just sitting there. But either way, that's off to the side. What are the aspects that are going to be beneath them is a good question, and I think we're actually kind of running out of time. So yeah, we're kind of running out of time on how to continue. This is
big topic.
I mean, we knew this though.
We knew it.
So yeah, this is definitely going to be at least a two-parter. So for now, this is probably going to where we're going to have to call it. It was a lot of flailing around, I think. But it's...
we're putting a lot of spaghetti on the board and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And we'll come back at you in the next episode with some more specific ideas.
Yeah.
But hey, man, Pantheon's a big topic.
Yeah.
Getting gods for your whole universe is it's a tough thing, and it's going to take you some time. It's going to take you some ideas. Some will fail, some will stick.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll call it quits for today, and we'll come back next week with some more specifics for you, and we'll finish this off.
All right.
But thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the end card.
Thanks.
Hey there. Welcome to the end card. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. You can see more of us. You can also follow us either here on YouTube or on Spotify, or you can slide into our DMs on Instagram, or you can leave a comment here and we'll talk about it. So today we've got a couple of comments that we're looking at. One of them being from I'm Too Jag. First off, thanks for commenting, I'm Too Jag. We've got one that says, another idea. I've just found this channel and I started at the beginning. Thank you. Hope you're enjoying. Instead of an Eastern Wind Dragon, have them be a Thunderbird. I like it. I think maybe that's just because of where we live. But we have a lot of cultures that sort of do have the Thunderbird here, and so I'm a little bit more sensitive, I guess, to the fact that that's sort of a real cultural thing here. So I was a little bit more hesitant to do something like that.
It did pop into my brain for that exact fact. Like, yeah.
I do. I mean, I love it. I love a Thunderbird.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would want to do directly a Thunderbird. I like the idea of a big bird.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've used like a hawk or a falcon or something like that, or an eagle. And I do like it a lot. I think, personally, I kind of like the idea of the Dragon Whispers. But I think that we should find a spot for something like that, like a Thunderbird.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I want to keep it as is. And we'll keep your suggestion in mind for the future when we're looking for other things to put new big beasts into.
Yeah.
Because I really like the imagery of that.
Yeah, totally. In Yothrmir, I was considering that a lot because of the fact that we had like griffins in there, and
yeah,
so like
very much.
That could be an easy place for us to stick another like bird like
descend from this big old bird or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
But thank you for launching ideas at us, and we will find a place to use it. So thanks for commenting.
We have another one here by 9Z768. Wow, this is great. Thank you, YouTube algorithm. Praise the algo. Praise the algo.
Thank you for commenting, and thank you, algorithm. I hope you enjoy your stay.
Yeah, it is actually really cool to hear not only that we're being suggested to people, but also people like that we're being suggested to them. It's very flattering, so it's very cool to hear. Thank you very much. But yeah, thanks for watching, and just remember, if you do want to be featured in one of these sorts of end cards, drop us a comment wherever you can, and we'll see what we can do from there.
Yeah.
But thanks for watching.
See you in the next one.
See ya.